Hello and welcome back to the Movie Memo Recaps. Today we are going to recap a 2025 movie titled Alarum. Please be advised that there will be spoilers ahead. In the opening scene, we are introduced to a couple on holiday in the Polish countryside. Joe and Lara, the husband and wife, are revealed to be former top American secret operatives who retired early to focus on developing a meaningful life together. Soon later, two French visitors, also on holiday in the region, notice Joe and Lara having breakfast together. The four of them had a casual talk, sharing experiences about their lives and jobs. At that point, the female traveler reveals that she works as a doctor in a hospital. Curious, she inquires about Joe's and Lara's vocations. However, rather than divulge their covert past, the pair lies, claiming to manage a tiny shop. After breakfast, Joe and Lara return to their accommodation. Joe offers they join the other tourists and explore the countryside, but Lara declines due to illness. She encourages Joe to proceed without her, reassuring him that she will wait at the lodge. Joe reluctantly accepts and leaves with the other tourists. Before departing, he surreptitiously gets a firearm in case something unexpected occurs during the journey. The group, guided by a local guide, heads deep into the jungle. Meanwhile, two CIA personnel pilots are on a reconnaissance plane. They fly towards the same woodland that Joe and the visitors are investigating. Suddenly, a shot from behind sends their plane flying into the trees. Joe, upon hearing the explosion, rushes to the source of the disturbance. Back at the lodge, Lara witnesses dense black smoke billowing from the forest and becomes anxious for Joe. Without hesitation, she sends him a message via satellite phone. Soon after, Joe and the tourists discover with shock that a plane crash caused the explosion. Joe and the doctor from breakfast swiftly examine the pilots, but they were all dead, shot in the head. Joe and the doctor realize that this was not an average accident. The plane was deliberately shot down. Joe, a former senior agent, recognizes the pilots as undercover CIA personnel. Moments later, he finds a hard drive in one of the agent's pockets and grabs it. The doctor resists, arguing that the hard disk does not belong to him. But Joe insists, claiming that it most likely contains crucial secrets. Unbeknownst to them, the plane's radio continues to function, transmitting their conversation to CIA headquarters. Sure enough, the CIA overhears Joe talking about the hard disk. One of the operatives recounts the incident to the CIA's boss, emphasizing the significance of the hard drive, which holds devastating evidence of his wrongdoing. At that point, the CIA head demands to know the site of the crash. As a result, the agent says it's deep in the forest in the Polish countryside. The scene turns to Joe, who urges the doctor and the other tourists to return to the lodge because the location is no longer safe. Before they can leave, a band of mercenaries unexpectedly approaches them. Orlan, the mercenary leader, challenges the guide about their goal with arrogance. The guide asserts that they are merely vacationers who coincidentally stumbled upon the plane disaster. Orlan immediately turns to the doctor, demanding to know where she is from. When she refuses to respond, Orlan brutally murders her. He then confronts Joe, asking if he discovered a hard drive among the wreckage. Joe lies, claiming to know nothing about it, despite the fact that the hard drive is hidden in his hands. Orlan raises his gun at Joe, trying to determine whether he is lying. But Joe, no average man, keeps calm and composed, convincing Orlan that he is telling the truth. As Orlan's soldiers begin searching for the crashed plane, Joe seizes the opportunity to retaliate. He successfully steals one of the enemy's vehicles and seeks to flee. Unfortunately, the automobile runs out of gas and stops in the middle of the road. Fortunately, Joe swiftly seizes a motorcycle from one of the mercenaries and rides away, just avoiding the incident. The narrative then turns to an elderly man named Chester. Chester, like Joe, is a secret spy, but unlike Joe, he is still actively serving the government. The CIA boss contacts Chester and assigns him a mission to apprehend Joe in the Polish countryside. At that point, Chester challenges the order, citing Joe's retirement 5 years before and questioning the basis for his current targeting. The CIA's chief reveals that Joe stole a vital hard disk belonging to the agency, leaving them with little alternative but to detain him. Not only that, but he guarantees Chester double his customary salary if he successfully apprehends Joe and recovers the hard drive. Chester accepts the task as a duty to his country and departs for Poland right away. Meanwhile, the mercenary leader, Orlan, has lost track of Joe. However, he believes Joe remains hidden somewhere in the jungle. Frustrated, Orlan yells into the woods, warning that if Joe does not surrender, He will go to the resort and kill all of the vacationers, including Joe's wife, Lara. Joe, who is hidden nearby, overhears the threat and immediately contacts Lara by satellite phone, advising her to prepare for impending peril. Lara takes immediate action after hearing the warning. As a former top-secret spy, she goes into combat mode, gathering weapons and preparing to fight. Lara then walks to a neighboring room in the lodge and advises the visitors staying there to hide beneath the bed for safety. 3 of Orland's men burst into the lodge just as she was securing the visitor. But before they can respond, Lara dispatches the threat with precision and skill. Chester, the CIA leader's covert operative, arrives at a rural hotel. In a horrifying display of brutality, Chester tests the strength of a poison he's created by giving it to the man who drove him to the hotel. Shortly after leaving the hotel, the driver collapses and dies from his injuries. Chester smiles to himself, relieved that his poison works perfectly. Meanwhile, Joe returned to the settlement. Exhausted, he breaks into a shop to rest, thankful that no one is around. Joe uses the landline to call the CIA's chief. During the call, Joe begs to know what is so crucial about the hard drive he discovered, wondering why so many people are after it. The CIA's head claims it holds sensitive government data and orders Joe to return it immediately. Joe, on the other hand, is unconcerned. He already knows that the hard drive contains evidence of the CIA leaders and other high-ranking officers' corruption. Joe makes it obvious that he has no intention of returning the hard disk. He despises corrupt officials, such as the CIA's chief, and intends to make the contents of the hard drive public. This declaration causes the CIA boss to panic. He promptly traces Joe's call to determine his position. Once he obtains the information, he contacts Chester and tells him where Joe is. The CIA's boss then urges Chester to assassinate Joe and retrieve the hard disk at any cost. Chester proceeds without reluctance to approach Joe in the shop where he is hiding. Returning home, Joe apologizes to Lara for causing turmoil by grabbing the hard drive from the downed CIA jet. Joe explains that he did it to expose the corruption of people in charge, guaranteeing that no future corrupt politicians harm their country. Despite this, Lara fully supports Joe's decision and assures him that she is capable of handling herself, encouraging him to remain safe. Just as the call finishes, Joe receives an unexpected guest, Chester. They greet each other casually, as old acquaintances would. They exchange pleasantries and catch up, as if they were old friends reconnecting. Chester then respectfully inquires whether Joe has taken the hard drive from the destroyed CIA jet. Joe lies, saying that Orland, the mercenary leader, had already stolen it. Chester, however, is unconvinced. He calmly advises that Joe hand up the hard drive to avoid a physical altercation between them. Chester pours 2 glasses of drink and offers one to Joe to relieve the tension. Joe refuses to drink due to his suspicions. Instead, Joe switches the discussion by asking Chester about Orland. He wants to know who Orland is and why so many people want the hard drive. Chester then discloses that Orland is working for Russian intelligence to steal the hard disk. If the Russians manage to gain it, they might easily destabilize America. Joe responds by asking Chester if he honestly feels the hard disk includes essential American data, rather than corruption data from the CIA's chief and other high-ranking officers. Despite this, Chester answers indifferently, claiming that he doesn't care about the contents. Chester's primary goal is to finish his task and receive payment for recovering the hard drive. The scene turns to Lara at the lodge. Orland's guys are holding the tourists hostage inside. Lara moves discreetly to the upper floor and dispatches one of the guards. She then tells the tourists to keep still while she deals with the other guards downstairs. Meanwhile, a few of Orland's guys are drinking and relaxing on the lower level. Suddenly, they hear a loud thud. It is the sound of a body striking the earth. When they investigate, they discover one of their own, whom Lara threw from above. Orland's right-hand guy, who is present, directs his men to search the top floors. However, when he sees another of his men killed, he becomes enraged and orders the surviving guards to track down the murderer. As they climb the stairs, Lara ambushes them, eliminating them one by one with vicious efficiency. Eventually, they corner Lara and hold her at gunpoint, forcing her to submit. Fortunately, she has a little knife hidden in her hair that she can use to rectify the situation. After defeating the guards, Lara confronts Orland's right-hand guy. He eventually overcomes her, weary from the fight. As a result, he puts her into a chair and begins to question her. He mockingly questions why Americans like Lara always act tough, as if they are invincible. Lara gently replies that she is not American, but rather German. She continues, stating that her and Joe's near invincibility led to their previous reputation as the world's most formidable secret operatives. Hearing Joe's name, the right-hand man learns Lara is Joe's wife. Immediately, The right-hand man directs Lara to contact Joe and demand that he hand over the hard drive. Lara agrees, but only if he returns her satellite phone, which is the only means to contact Joe. When the right-hand man offers it to Lara, she rapidly types a code into the gadget. Suddenly, an explosion shakes the room. The scene turns to Orlin and his men, who have tracked down Joe and Chester to the house where they have been hiding. A local peasant, who had observed Joe, divulged his whereabouts shortly later. As a result, Orlin instructs 3 of his men to enter the residence and confront Joe. However, the men pause, fully aware that Joe is no ordinary opponent. Orlin is enraged by their reluctance and quickly murders all 3 of them. Joe and Chester know that Orlin and his soldiers have encircled the farm. Chester, who is sitting, asks Joe for assistance in standing, complaining of a strong discomfort in his back. But when Joe reaches out to help him, Chester stabs him with a syringe. Chester coldly reveals that the syringe contains a poison he made. Joe has only 24 hours to live until he gets the antidote. Chester promises to provide him the antidote if Joe hands over the hard drive. Joe reluctantly agrees to return the hard drive, but only after they deal with Orlin and his guys. Without wasting time, Chester opens a window and shoots a neighboring power pole, causing the surroundings to darken. Down below, Orlin and his men open fire on the home, filling the air with bullets. Orlin then uses a smoke grenade to flood the house with dense, choking smoke. His soldiers storm inside, but Joe and Chester prepare for their arrival, leading to a brutal confrontation. During the turmoil, Chester detonates a grenade, blowing open the garage door. However, the explosion knocks the hard drive out of Joe's grasp, and Chester snatches it fast. Chester hits Joe without hesitation before fleeing, leaving Joe to face Orlin's soldiers alone. Joe, now outnumbered and weakened, is forced to fight his way past the mercenaries. During the struggle, one of Orlin's soldiers throws another grenade, generating a large explosion. The blast throws Joe flying, exacerbating his already vulnerable situation. Moments later, Orlin approaches Joe, gun in hand. He questions why Joe didn't simply hand over the hard drive from the start, sparing all of this violence. Joe responds by questioning why the hard drive is so vital that Orlin will go to such efforts to obtain it. Orlin explains that the hard drive is evidence of wrongdoing by the CIA's chief and other high-ranking American officials. Orlin despises them and feels the hard drive holds the secret to taking them down. He also acknowledges that he shot down the CIA plane earlier to steal the hard disk. Hearing this, Joe realizes Orlin is more than simply a mercenary working for Russian intelligence. They share the same goal, to expose corrupt officials in America. Joe apologizes and reveals that Chester has already taken the hard disk. He proposes that they work together to track down Chester, who is most likely on his way to the lodge to attack Lara. Orlin agrees, and the two create an uncomfortable alliance before running off to find Chester. As they go, Joe calls the CIA director and pledges to expose his corrupt practices. The CIA commander responds smugly, noting that Chester has already collected the hard disk. He also taunts Joe by telling him that he has been poisoned and has less than 24 hours to live. Joe discloses that the poison did not fully permeate his system, therefore, he is not in immediate danger. Enraged, the CIA boss instructs his troops to send a destructive drone to Joe and Orlin's location, aiming to permanently eliminate them. Shortly, 2 armed drones appeared in the skies above the Polish countryside, searching for Joe. It didn't take long for them to notice him, driving beside Orlin. Without hesitation, the drones started a fire on the car. Joe managed to spin and accelerate, narrowly missing the barrage. However, the drones were unrelenting, chasing them with unwavering precision. The chase became increasingly fierce, and in a desperate attempt to flee, their car smashed into a roadside inn. Fortunately, Joe and Orlin escaped unharmed. They swiftly regrouped and focused their attention on the drones. After a fierce struggle, they were able to destroy one of the drones. But just as they were catching their breath, Orlin turned on Joe and aimed a gun at him from behind. However, before Orlin could react, a gunshot rang out. Lara fired the shot, which hit Orlin. However, their ordeal was far from over. The last drone carried out another attack, resulting in a tremendous explosion. Despite the turmoil, Lara and Joe were able to escape, albeit with serious injuries. The next morning, Joe brought Lara to the shore of a nearby lake. The wound she had received during her earlier duel with Orlin's right-hand man made her feel weak and defenseless. Joe did his best to treat her injuries and comfort her with reassuring words. Fortunately, his efforts helped Lara recover somewhat. Chester abruptly appeared as they were relaxing. Joe was perplexed. Joe questioned Chester's persistent stay, noting that he was supposed to be on his way to America to deliver the hard drive. Chester said that he couldn't leave since his body had suddenly become feeble. Joe then spoke the truth. He'd poisoned Chester, not himself. He produced an antidote and explained that the drink Chester had previously taken contained poison. Now it was evident why Joe had denied the drink. In this difficult situation, Joe made an offer. He offered to provide Chester the antidote under one condition. Chester had to return the hard disk and help bring down the CIA leader and other corrupt officials. Chester had no choice but to agree. From that moment forward, the unexpected trio forged an uncomfortable partnership, driven by a common aim. Thanks for watching. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe for more of these recaps. Until next time, have a nice day.